Hello and welcome to the 25th episode of the Ademola Bookmen Podcast. My name's Al Bond and I'm here with my friend John Coughlin. Hi, Johnny.
Hey, Al, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, Johnny. Now I've got through that. And this week we're doing I Think Therefore I Play, the Andrea Pirlo autobiography.
Penso quindi gioco.
That's his real name.
No, that's what you say. I think therefore I play. And it's co-authored with Alessandro Alciato. God, I hope I don't have to say many more Italian names in this episode.
No, I don't think they're going to come up. You'll be all right. So then, well, of any, I guess, podcast that we've done, this is the hipster choice, isn't it, Johnny? Yeah, I mean, Cruyff, we've had Cruyff. I mean, Maradona's always going to be hip. But the hippest of the hips is definitely Pirlo. Johnny, what did you think about Pirlo before you read this book?
You know, I was thinking about this because I thought you might ask the question. And obviously, I've seen Pirlo play many times. And I just don't know if I ever really got it, to be honest, about Pirlo.
Yeah, so Pirlo fans turn away because he's one of them. I guess I must have seen him play a million times, but with the exception of penalty kicks, I don't remember a single fucking thing he ever did in a game of football, and that's genuinely the truth. And I know that's a failing on me, but he was just one of those players, Johnny, I didn't get. He's like, and I know one will like this, he's the Italian Carrick, isn't he?
Well, I guess he is. Maybe you know, he scored so many free kicks. He was doing a lot of kind of, what's the name of that skill that Zidane is most associated with? That kind of double back drag, you know. He did a lot of that kind of stuff. You wouldn't have seen a lot of that from Carrick. But yeah, I think he might have been. Yeah, I think he might have been a bit more flash than Carrick. But I see what you're getting at because they were both at the base of midfield. That's the kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I do mean that. Of course, he was a superior player to Carrick, but it was that position where you're pulling strings at the base of midfield, right? Retaining possession.
Xabi Alonso, but kind of with more in product, well, like kind of flasher Xabi Alonso, maybe.
Yeah, that's another good one. But yeah, maybe to someone such as myself who's not necessarily played the game particularly, more of an enthusiast than a student. Yeah, I never saw what he was doing. He was always one of them. I was like, overrated. Pirlo's overrated. I've never seen him do it. Like, show me some goals. Show me goals. So he was one of them. He's always been someone that I've held a fairly controversial viewpoint about, i.e., it's not all that, is he?
He says in the book that the Ballon d'Or or whatever, it always goes to forwards, people who score goals. But I think the type of player that he is, people are kind of most romantic about, right? As a United fan, throughout those Ferguson years, it was always Scholes for me. And I'm sure there are many Italians who probably seen United and think, I'm not really sure about that ball Scholes, you know?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It is. It's for pulling figures, and it's the students of the game and say, oh, you watch him, look what he does. He's a metronome. He's spreading the play around. Whereas I was watching the forward players, frankly, like, look at him scoring goals. He's captured my
You're watching
imagination. Pippo Inzaghi. Well, let's get back onto him. You think he's an unpleasant character now? Just you wait.
I've got a question for you in the form of a riddle. Not really. Pirlo is to Italy what James Milner is to England.
You've struck me dumb, Johnny. How do you mean?
Well, that's the question. Pirlo is the most capped under-21 player for Italy with 46 caps.
Look who's done his research then. No kidding. How about that? He's about as unlike Milner as any other footballer could be, though, isn't he? I mean, just in terms of, just look at him. Look at his beautiful full lips. Milner's not got a lovely pair of lips like that, has he? I mean, Milner's short and squat, whereas Pirlo is languid and exotic and elegant.
And he's got a heck of a mane, that man.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Okay, shall we talk about I Think Therefore I Play?
Yeah, so the very title itself is suggesting that this is going to be a book with some profundity, which I didn't necessarily find. Just indeed in the preface, like the ghostwriter, Pirlo brings people together because he is football. Yuck. No.
Well, there is a nice thing that they say about Pirlo. I saw somewhere that Pirlo belongs to everyone, which I thought was really nice. But that's like something that someone coined a long time ago. But yeah, this...
Oh, yeah, who was the first one that belonged to everyone? I bet Garincha belonged to everyone. Pele belonged to everyone. Georgie Best belonged to everyone.
I saw another quote somewhere. Let me just find it, because I have it right here. Just
in the sense that he played for about 15 clubs in Italy, he did play for everyone. He did belong to everyone at one point or other, right? But
Buffon, who played with Pirlo at Juventus, said Pirlo is a genius. Together with Baggio, I think he's the greatest talent that Italy has produced in the last 25 years. Now, that's really saying something. Pirlo himself dedicates a whole chapter to Del Piero. And Buffon would have played for Del Piero for 1,000 years. So it's interesting that he would have picked Pirlo over Del Piero. It's really saying something, isn't it?
Well, it is. But I would imagine that is probably the common consensus among everybody, right? Who are the leading Italian footballers of the last 25 years? I mean, for me, Del Piero is a bigger name. I just watched him play more. I watched him play more in the Champions League. Even when they won the World Cup, as soon as England get knocked out, I'm out, man. I'm out. I can't bear to watch any subsequent. I did watch the final, but I don't remember. Who remembers anything but Zidane's headbutt?
Well, see, this is why I stopped watching any international competitions after the second week of the League of Nations.
Well, it's different. I mean, sometimes it's nice. I can remember watching 2008 being like, I've got no dog in this fight. I can just enjoy the football.
Yeah, Del Piero and that Italian team, I always like that Juventus team in the mid-90s. It was so terrifying for United fans. And that was really the kind of zenith or the end of the heyday of Italian football. So even though Pirlo won 2 Champions Leagues with Milan, I don't think Italian football was as strong in those years as it was when Del Piero was playing. But anyway, whatever, I think we've probably established that neither of us are Italian football experts, so we can probably stop pretending.
Yes, that's it. Anyone coming here for some pure Pirlo hagiography is going to be very disappointed.
Yeah, okay, so he played with Brescia when he was a little man, when he was a kid. And what was interesting, I suppose, is that he went to Inter as fairly soon. People were coming to see him at Brescia when he was very, very young. And he was he was playing for Italy from under 15. And he obviously played all the way through the various ages. But he was kind of a known quantity from a very, very young age. But obviously not a Rooney, because he played so much in the under-21s, more of a Milner, as previously discussed. But he went to Inter as a young enough fella, but it didn't work out for him, and he had been an Inter fan, so that was all kind of interesting. But I'm kind of giving this, I'm giving you the kind of the timeline, but this book isn't written in that style.
No, it's not at all. It's not an autobiography. It's more a collection of his thoughts, a la Milner again.
Right. Or Crouch, I thought there were similarities to the Crouch book. Much like in the Crouch book, a lot of the thoughts or reflections or, little pearls of philosophy, whatever you want to call them, are pretty damn lame.
They certainly are. And he seems to undermine them all within the same paragraph a lot of the time. For example, there is a big long paragraph about footballers' crazy superstitions, which he mocks all the way through all these silly footballers. There's Gilardino, who'll take his disgusting boots with him wherever he goes to squeeze the magic fluids onto his new boots. But he makes all these points about how ridiculous people's superstitions are, but then he says he always makes sure to touch his balls in case they are right after all. He's just got that little safety net, I think this is bollocks, but I'll just touch my bollocks to make sure it is bollocks. I didn't really understand, but he seems to be caught between two camps there.
Actually, maybe I said let's go ahead with it, but I think it actually warrants kind of just outlining some of the things that he did, because it's really quite something, because it's not really in the book. What I thought was really striking is, so he went into, didn't work out, and he went to Milan. He was at Milan for 10 years, and he won the European Cup twice there, and he won the scudetto there as well. But he seems to hate Milan. But he doesn't mention any of that, really. Like, he talks about the Liverpool game, and we can get to that later. And then he went to Juventus, where he won the league four seasons in a row. But it's not, there's no kind of chronology. And if you were trying to, if you were studying this book because you had an exam on Pirlo, you might fail the exam, because there's not a pile of autobiographical detail in the book.
No, not at all. Yeah, it just jumps from chapter to chapter, each with a different thought. Yeah, with no notion of chronology. Yeah, and you'd have no idea really what he's won and what he hasn't won. He spends a good deal more time on his defeats than he does his victories, which I thought was telling.
Yeah, and it's not that I want books to go in a chronological order, and I'm all for this idea of just kind of outlining kind of interesting or entertaining kind of things. But in any of the books where they've done it, I don't think we're yet to come across a book that has done it particularly well, I think.
Yes, it's very unsatisfying, and it ends so very, very abruptly. All of a sudden, there's just like a final thought, and then that's the end of a book, and it's like, that was not how to finish a book at all. Not at all. He just turned the next page. I wonder it's the index. It was jarring. It's
because he is so superstitious, as you pointed out, that he said he had to end the book on the 20th chapter because his number is 21 and he wants to start his next book on chapter 21. So there you go. He was saying that they're all crazy for being superstitious, but that's the reason he cut the book in half.
Yeah, maybe make the chapters a bit longer. You can fit more in.
I wasn't asking for more of his thoughts. I think the thing about it was, here the ghostwriter, and potentially, I suspect the ghostwriter thought they were being really funny. And I think I was about halfway through the book when I realized, these things are supposed to be funny. Like, he has a whole chapter on how he hates warm-ups. And it just went on and on. And I really did take me a while to realize, this is supposed to be satire, but it just wasn't particularly good satire.
Yeah, so this is what he says about warm-ups. One part of my job I'll never learn to love is the pre-match warm-ups. I hate it with every fibre of my being. It actually disgusts me. It's nothing but masturbation for conditioning coaches, their way of enjoying themselves at the player's expense. I've no doubt it helps you avoid injury. It's just, look at those fuckers masturbating. Although I do feel nice and loose. Yeah, very, very, very strange. And it's obviously written for the Italian market, isn't it? And I think there must be some phrasings and idioms which are just going over our head because they sound mad.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Some of it was just came across as very odd. And I just maybe that sense of humor doesn't translate or something, because some of it felt so kind of flat. But maybe it's funny in the original Italian.
Well, this is a dearly beloved book, isn't it, I believe? I mean, this is one, you were talking about books that stand the test of time. If you click on footballers' autobiographies on Amazon, this is invariably one of the first which pops up. And I have to admit, I find it a little bit hard to understand why, other than the fact that Pirlo is so deeply admired and loved by a certain sort of football fan. I
think that accounts for a lot of it, though. The Zlatan book, which is a better book than this. The Zlatan book will be around for 1,000 years because Zlatan is such a big kind of character himself. But I think Pirlo did himself a bit of a disservice here, because he has that image that you said, where he's just this cool, stone cold motherfucker, and everyone's like, this guy is the kind of hipster's choice, as you say. And he just seems like a bit of a dope when you read the book.
Yes, it absolutely undermines him as this sophisticate, doesn't it? He's very, very proud to point out before the World Cup final he was playing PlayStation all day. And there's nothing wrong in that. I'm a gamer me. But if I was him, I'd just let people believe he was wandering around drinking, like sampling wine and stuff, which is what I think people imagine Pirlo does do in his spare time, perhaps read poetry whilst sampling fine wine and
exactly.
noodling on a guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Wandering around in some kind of meadow, just looking up at the sky or something, you know. Yeah,
thinking smart thoughts.
Exactly.
But no, he's just like everyone else. He's just a dumb footballer playing games.
He's in the hotel with Nesta, both of them being Barcelona and playing against each other in FIFA.
Well, to me, Johnny, it's very relatable. But whether we needed to hear about it in his book, I mean, he really is admiring of his PlayStation. He even brings Pep Guardiola into a PlayStation analogy, which is quite frankly nuts. Pep Guardiola is a hidden part of a PlayStation, which most people don't know about, but you can access it if you're clever. It's like, bloody hell. And PlayStations don't work like that.
Maybe this is what you said, the kind of, maybe it works in Italian, but him and Nesta had a plot to kidnap Guardiola and cut him in half.
Mm-hmm.
What end? I never really quite understood. And he didn't have to do that in the end because he got to meet Guardiola. And another thing that I noticed about this book was, for all of his incredible achievements as a footballer, and you know, you read about him. I was just reading a thing on the BBC about him there, and it's just like, you know, the kind of lyrical kind of descriptions of footballers that you really only get with this particular type of player. I think that he kind of defied stats, and he was just kind of stretching the limits of the writer's languages to say how fucking wonderful this guy was. He achieved all these things, winning Champions League, winning the World Cup, but the biggest achievement in his life, according to this book, was being courted by Guardiola. And like, he talks a lot about, he was courted by Real Madrid, he was courted by Barcelona when Guardiola was there, and he was courted by Chelsea. He talks about all of those things more than he talks about his 10 years at AC Milan. I found that astonishing.
But I think this book was written when he was a Juventus player.
And you can't speak kindly of your time at Milan when you're a Juventus player?
That would be my explanation, Johnny.
But
he doesn't want to go on about it. He belongs to
everyone now.
But he particularly belongs to Andrea Agnelli from the Agnelli family, who gets his own chapter all by himself. I mean, he does seem absolutely in love with Juventus. Right? I mean, he talks about, it's just this dynasty of quality that he talks about in a way that he never talks about with AC Milan. Or indeed Inter, his childhood love, who now he's completely dismissed and dislikes.
Yeah, and he also says, there's no way in the world I would go down to Serie B for any team, which I kind of appreciated. It was kind of nice. It's again, the kind of thing that you were saying where he undermines himself. He says, Buffon is such a legend. He went down to Serie B. And then another part of the book is like, there's no way in the fucking world I would go down to Serie B for any team.
Well, he is an individualist. He talks about desperately wanting to win the Ballon d'Or, and he's pretty bitter that he never got anywhere close. The closest he got was when he came seventh with 2.66% of a vote, which I think basically was his Italy manager and Buffon. But he's really head up about that, and he talks about it, and he says if footballers don't care about individual awards, they don't really care about playing for the team, which is a very new viewpoint. Well, we all know that's what footballers think. It's just they very rarely say that.
The way he said it, I thought was fair enough. It's kind of like some kind of counter logic or whatever he said. By thinking of himself first, he's thinking of the team. I liked that.
You can make that work, can't you? I mean, if you're looking after yourself, playing as best as you can, then you are going to be playing better for the team.
So, fun fact about the Agnelli family. I don't know if you're an Italian speaker, Al, but do you know what Agnelli means?
Lambs.
It's funny, isn't it?
Little lambs.
Andrea Lambs. Which is kind of not quite as sexy, is it?
I think this is what I want to talk about more than anything else in the book, is his chapter of love to Andrea Agnelli, who at the time was the owner of Juventus. And he must have been very young because he's only 48 now. So this was written, 12, 13 years ago. So he'd be in his mid-30s. My goodness me. Pirlo is deeply, deeply in love with this man who pays his checks. Oh, how he loves him. There is one point where he talks about Agnelli giving a halftime team talk akin to Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday.
It was amazing. It was absolutely fucking astounding. I couldn't believe this. Like, it's so lame. Anyway, 2015, but go ahead.
This sickened me to my core. Absolutely sickened me. So what he uses as inspiration is some fucking golfing Ryder Cup 2012 where Europe came back 4 points behind. Who cares? It's golf.
Miracle in Medina in Chicago, yeah.
And so Agnelli gives a speech about this, and I have to hear about this stupid speech. And more than that, I have to read the words in Pirlo's autobiography, Justin fucking Rose. I don't want to read about Justin Rose. Rory McIlroy. Get the fuck away from me. I don't want to hear these names in a book about football. What's he doing there?
All 12. He named all 12 members of the 11 members and the non-playing captain. He named all of them, which was an interesting editorial choice, I thought.
It was a sickening. I don't want to have to read about golfers when I'm reading about, certainly not British golfers. Oh, it was awful. It was like reading a book about El Fenomeno and he's going on about Will Carling or Lawrence Dallaglio from like the English. I don't want to hear about it. No, Agnelli, that's a horror. And he's like, I got home and I wanted to know more about this triumphant Ryder Cup team. No, you play football. You've won the World Cup. Don't worry about it. It's shit. Yeah, so...
The speech itself as well was essentially he described what happened. Europe were down X amount of points and they needed to get 8 points in the last day out of 12, which is kind of unheard of. But the speech just sounds like he kind of described what happened. And it does make me think, and we've talked about this, that sometimes I think you read these books and you're looking for that, that little thing that you didn't know about. What is that kind of X factor, if you want, that they have, the je ne sais quoi that they have in the changing room that makes these players go the extra mile? But I think a lot of it might be just quite lame.
Well, it is quite lame. I mean, that's what these inside football club TV shows us. You think, you're getting Al Pacino with Any Given Sunday, but in fact, you've got Mikel Arteta drawing a heart and a brain on a board, shaking hands, or you've got Agnelli talking about the fucking 2012 Ryder Cup.
Another thing about this book, again, I listened to this one. It's available on audiobook, and it's not read, because this is what the guy says. It's performed. And the guy thinks he's doing like I, Claudius or something like that. It's comical in parts. But when he does Al Pacino, he actually does Al Pacino. It's really, really ridiculous. Really ridiculous. To the point where it was kind of fun at that point.
Oh, wow, that is fun.
It was kind of fun.
Performed by, I mean, that's a red flag right from the get-go, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway.
And another thing, Johnny, have you ever watched, I've watched that Any Given Sun. It's not that good. It's all right.
The speech is fun, but the film's not the best American football film, I don't think. It's grand. It's grand.
Until it became a thing later. I never remembered that speech.
There are so many really, really rubbish stories in this book about, is it Nesta who got injured? Or was it De Rossi? One or the other. And at the World Cup, it was De Rossi in 2006. And then they got lost on the motorway. Again, maybe it's a language thing, but I couldn't even understand the story.
No, I didn't understand the story. It was all something to do with Ausfahrt, meaning exit. And they kept telling him he was going out. It sounded quite dangerous and gave me stress. Frankly, this story is like they go, you got to get off here. And it's like, he had to brake. And it sounded like you could have caught a huge crash, but they're all laughing away. That was funny.
And then
it was a very peculiar story.
Then just kind of harassing Gennaro Gattuso, just really harassing him. And he sounds like Pirlo makes him out to be kind of like borderline.
According to this, Gattuso is so dumb.
And then
Gattuso is a reasonably successful manager now, so I'm not sure I buy it.
Yeah, and Pirlo is not so successful, is he? But spraying him with fire extinguishers and this kind of stuff, but just kind of tormenting them. But this is Again,
I'm mocking his speech as well. That's absolutely abysmal. Just someone just picking on you every time you get a word wrong. I mean, that I suppose it's funny for them. But poor Gattuso, does also not someone think of Gattuso? It's still bullying just because you're a footballer.
I didn't hate it or anything. I didn't particularly like it, but I didn't hate it. There's kind of fun stuff in there, I guess. A lot of dumb stuff and some fun stuff.
I warmed up to it, to be honest. I started the first half hour, I was like, this is shit and stupid. But we got some nice moments. There are some pretty decent quotes. Conte, what does he say about Conte? It's a fairly famous quote. But when Conte speaks, his words assault you. Yeah, I believe that. Like, I do believe it. And I think the other famous quote was, and I pray to God, because if there is a God, he certainly isn't French. I think that one stuck out, right?
That one did stand out. That was quite funny, to be fair. Did you know that about Conte, that he had received a 10-month ban for match fixing when he was the manager of Siena? Funnily enough, it was reduced to 4 months on appeal, but then he was cleared after he served the 4 months and just before he was made Italy manager. And I just remember in the Sven book, Sven saying that there was all manner of shady shit going on. So I'm not sure I necessarily trust whatever process cleared Conte of that particular finding, you know.
And I got to tell you, Pirlo doesn't seem particularly bothered about it. Oh, you've got to do these things. I tell you who he doesn't love, Johnny. Man markers. Doesn't like people man marking him.
No.
This is another whole chapter. A whole chapter where he's basically humiliating anyone who's had the audacity to ever man mark him. And his number one target is a lad who plays for, drumroll, Malta. Malta.
Well, your man, his name is Shembri. He must be over the moon. He's kind of like one of the main protagonists in Pirlo's book.
This poor lad. It's just saying, the whole chapter is devoted to saying how this guy, Andre Shembri, is in love with him. He won't take his eyes off him, won't stay more than a foot away. He speaks to him, why don't you go away? Because the manager told me to stay. He just can't get it through his head that a manager might tell another player to man mark him. It's astonishing. And
then, of course, Ji-sung Park got it in the neck as well.
Ji-sung Park, under instructions from Purple Nose Alex Ferguson.
That was kind of fun, wasn't it? But I do remember Park in the Champions League was usually, that was his job, and it wasn't nice. Fergie's teams in the Champions League around that period were pretty bloody dreary.
He was always very cautious in Europe, wasn't he? Very cautious.
So cautious, yeah. It wasn't the United way.
No, I mean, it had some success, but as I always say, they could have had more. But it's interesting to know. I guess that's what Ferguson is known as throughout Europe, right? He's the purple-nosed bloke. I mean, he's not the legend that he is in Britain, is he? So he's just like a famous manager. You must see him on the TV every Wednesday night. Like, oh, it's old Purple Nose.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the foreign perspectives, and I'm going to just jump quickly to the Liverpool Champions League final.
Yeah,
which was just so much fun to see from the other point. How can the good guys lose? And it has never occurred to me ever that AC Milan could be considered the good guys, despite my very real antipathy towards Liverpool. Yeah, just seeing it from that perspective was eye-opening for me, because I was always like, well, of course, the good guys won that game. Look at the assorted stars, the band of mercenaries defeated by Benitez's band of fairly shitty players, with the exception of one or two.
He called Dudek a clown.
Yeah, very bitter about old Dudek, and he thought he was mocking them. That was something that never occurred to me. The wiggly spaghetti legs. That was just trying to put them off. Yeah. But he sort of saw it as them like their knees were knocking together, which is why they'd lost their 3-0 lead. And I'd never seen it like that. I'd never thought of it like that. But Pirlo did.
That whole chapter about the Liverpool defeat, as you say, there is an element that's interesting there. But it's mostly just him trying to outline in the most extreme terms just how disgusted he was, and just trying to outdo himself one sentence after the next. And that got pretty old pretty quickly, I thought.
Yeah, it does, and it bleeds in almost to the next. Well, it does bleed into the next chapter where he's still talking about how disgusted he was. I can only imagine, though. I mean, much as it's remembered as this miracle in Liverpool, but what trauma that must have inflicted upon AC Milan fans. I mean, it must have been pretty brutal.
But he doesn't like. There's not a single insight into the game.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you have nothing on that. And that would have been interesting. Why did they all stop playing? He just says they forgot who they all were, all 11 players. But yeah, that's silly, isn't it? It's a bit glib.
In the same way, it's falling flat when he's trying to be funny. Maybe he's trying to be like, philosophical, but he's failing to be. But contrary to that, when he talks about walking up to take the first penalty in the World Cup final in 2006, he talks about how it feels in that moment. And, this is something that you've probably heard or read elsewhere, but that is interesting. It is interesting. Imagine being that person in that moment, that however many million or billions of people are watching you. That is pretty incredible stuff. So I was interested in that.
How do you think you'd handle that, Johnny? Because I think I know how you'd handle it.
I'd be happy if I made it as far as the penalty spot.
I'm not saying I'll do any better, but yeah, I don't see you doing great in that situation either. Those legs would be shaking, wouldn't they? Oh, blimey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He gives some interesting enough kind of behind the scenes kind of descriptions. Lippy calling them all shits when they drew at Australia in the same World Cup. Some of that is kind of vaguely interesting, but I guess in a lot of these books, they don't give you all that much kind of new stuff. Well, I guess what was interesting was totally out of nowhere at the end of the book is an accusation against Deportivo La Coruña for taking drugs. Where did this come from?
Well, he had pretty good evidence, didn't he? Because he's never seen people run so hard in a game. And there it was. Oh, those lads just didn't stop.
Yeah, even at halftime, they just kept running around. He kind of immediately segued into talking about how Barcelona would never do drugs. And then for a minute, I was thinking, is he trying to tell us something here? But I don't think he was. But just back on the Barcelona thing, he said that he was approached by Guardiola to be the kind of fourth midfielder to rotate in and out with Xavi, Iniesta and Busquets. Which would have been really something. Like that is a legendary team and particularly a legendary midfield. Well, Messi as well, obviously, but like that would have been quite a cast of characters to be involved with.
I'm glad it didn't happen, frankly. God, we hear enough about that Barcelona team, don't we? There's another player, Xavi. What did he? I don't really see it. Yeah, there's another one. Is he good?
Anyway, okay, you mentioned earlier about Pipo Pupo. You want to tell us about Inzaghi?
Yeah, very unappealing character at the very best of times.
Or offside, to quote Purple Nose.
If you're familiar with the film The Untouchables, he looks very much like the character who kills Sean Connery's character, Evil. He died squealing like a pig. Ugly, ugly, awful man, Pippo Inzaghi. I always hated him. And now I hate him even more because his pre-match ritual is to shit 4 times because he's eaten packets and packets of baby rusks. I mean, it's just so vile. I mean, how could you? Oh, would you like to come home with me tonight? Oh, successful Italian food. Yes, I would. Have you got anything to eat? Yes, rusks like a baby. It's just disgusting, man. It's just the idea of me knowing what Pippo Inzaghi is shitting out before a game is just appalling to me. And he says it smells, which absolutely undermines Pirlo's sophisticated image. It's all toilet humour, PlayStation and shitting. Well done, Pirlo.
Again, it just reminded me of the Crouch book. Because to be fair, the Crouch's book, and to be fair, the Pirlo's book, Milner wouldn't even give you that. He'd say something like, well, there is a player who has a particularly disgusting habit, but I couldn't say something about that here,
He's spending a lot of time on the toilet also, if you catch my drift. Yeah, this is Crouchy's book, isn't it? But it's Crouchy's book, which is pretending to be profound, when in fact it's nothing but. It's just a really good player who just gets that given to him anyway, doesn't he? You just picture, Pirlo, I bet he knows nice coffee. I bet he's got a lovely coffee machine in his house. I bet he has. I bet he knows about poetry. This is obviously something I'm projecting onto him. Like, I bet he loves poetry.
Well, he does own a winery.
Everyone in fucking Italy's got a winery, Johnny. Of course they do.
Iniesta's a big wine man as well. He's gone into selling wine, hasn't he, Iniesta?
Well, it's just a quick passport to sophistication, isn't it? Oh, I like wine. Woohoo. Good for you, mate. It's gross. Everyone knows wine is gross. No one really likes it. They just pretend. And that's my final word. They're just pretending to look smart. You're not smart. Tastes like this. No, it doesn't. It tastes like red wine. It all tastes like red wine. Some taste nicer, some taste worse. But they all have a standard of about 4. The best tasting one tastes 4 out of 10. Sorry, Johnny, do go on.
Sorry, I keep trying to cut in, but I do kind of agree. Wine.
Yeah, it's shit. And don't get me started on white wine. And fucking champagne is the biggest con in the whole world. What are you? Get away. Just like mixed beer and Fanta. There you go. Boom. You'll like it just as much. Anyway, so of course he's got a winery, and that makes him sexy, doesn't it? Like, imagine there you are in a bar, like looking all cool in your old neck jumper with your cigarette and your long hair. Oh, I own a vineyard. I bet you do. But inside that vineyard, he's watching Pippo Inzaghi taking a shit whilst playing PlayStation. So let's not forget that, ladies.
Hiding in a wardrobe with his fire extinguisher, waiting to get Gennaro Gattuso.
Yeah, there he goes. He's just a Serge Gainsbourg-like character. He's not at all. He's just a knobhead like all of them. We got some other thoughts. Should we do a chapter on racism? Don't do your chapter on racism because it's not going to come. I want to do a chapter on racism. Victims of racism, Johnny, it's actually easier than you thought. Just smile at them. Just give them a lovely big smile. Don't walk off. That's surrendering. Just give them a big smile to let them know you like them. That counteracts the racism. So, Balotelli's all right. He's doing great.
Yeah, well, I think he was trying. Like you said, he was sickened by racism and racists. So give him his due,
He did, of course. It's just his prescription for solving it. Maybe it's not one I would. Oh, he goes at great lengths to describe how it disgusts him. His solution. Again, I'm not knocking him for this. Just give him a big smile.
He was trying to be decent, but he was sickened to a point.
He was sickened to a point. It's very much racism from 10 years ago. He wouldn't have written this now. 10 years later, he wouldn't write the same chapter.
Yeah. I think you're probably right.
Also, there's a chapter on fucking VAR. You got that wrong, didn't you? There's like, in the future, there'll just be a little man standing by the side of a screen and all controversies will be over in 5 seconds. Yeah, Nostradamus there, Pirlo. Wrong. What
I thought was interesting enough was, so I was watching some of his highlights and he has scored an awful lot of free kicks. He says in the book that it's his ambition to become the highest scoring free kick taker in Serie A. Do you know whether he achieved it all?
I'm going to guess no.
Incorrect. He is joint highest scorer of free kicks in Serie A with Mihailovic with the beautiful left foot.
Oh, there you go.
28 free kicks each in Serie A.
Well, good for him.
There you go.
The pretender to the crown in England is sitting on the bench at Forest at the moment. Ward-Prowse is ready to step up and claim the English record soon. See you later, Bex.
Oh, really? Is he
yeah. He's two away. 2 away from Beckham.
Go on. And how old is Ward-Prowse?
28. Unfortunately, he's really rubbish and he's actually terrible at football. He's really good at free kicks, but like the actual football part, I'll tell you what, he's one of those base of midfielders who stands around and I'm thinking, is he doing nothing? No, he's doing nothing.
If you could just bring him on and off for free kicks, that'd be fine.
That would be great. Like hockey, we do that in hockey, right? Other sports, Johnny, why do they bother? On that note, and I don't think we've ever talked about this, but I want to talk about it now. I remember your brother saying, and this was years ago, you told me this, your brother was watching someone doing like some shit up BMXing, going like, look at that lad. If he just concentrated on playing football, imagine how good he'd be with all that coordination. I feel that way too. Just, good at skateboarding. You try kicking a ball. That would be cool, wouldn't it? Look how good that would be. And everyone would respect you rather than think you were just an overgrown idiot. Adult skateboarders catching some flack there from me. Well,
What's the name of the German coach?
Nagelsmann. That's it.
posting around on his massive surfboard on wheels.
Yeah, it's a bad look for football, isn't it? Don't do
very,
that.
very
That's two worlds that don't collide. Skate kids and football kids are not the same things. They should stay separate. Nagelsmann, don't combine the beams. Where does it end?
The free kicks. What was interesting, I thought, was so he closely studied Juninho Pernambucano's style. He said and this was when he was already an established professional, that he just watched so many videos and it took him ages and he just practiced for hours and hours until he figured out. And he was actually on the toilet when he had his eureka moment. What Juninho was doing, he was just hitting with 3 of his toes. And that's the magic. So if you want to try it out, guys, that's how you do it.
Yeah, that's it. He said he studied this for hours. Do you think he could have just rang up Juninho? Just given him a bell. Like, how'd you do it? I'm sure he would have took his call. Oh, it's not fucking Pirlo on the line, is it? Oh, God. Yeah, just how'd you do it? 3 toes. You'd tell him, wouldn't you? You'd share your secret.
Isn't that the thing from Zlatan's book as well, that he used to watch videos back when it was VHS for hours and just practice? So maybe it's kind of something that he'd been doing all of his life. And maybe that's why he's good at free kicks and you're maybe not so good at free kicks. Huh?
Who'd have thought, eh? Practice. No, I genuinely think there wasn't YouTube when I was a kid. If I could have seen people doing that thing where you're doing keepy-uppies and then spinning your foot around the ball and then doing another keepy-uppy, I would have practiced it. I just didn't even know that was possible. All I knew was you could kick a ball against the wall and boot it in your dad's garage.
Yeah, it's funny when you see new skills, isn't it? There's a thing that keeps popping up on Instagram at the moment, which is a skill I hadn't seen before, where one fella stands 30 or 40 yards away from you. He kicks it at you and it lands at your feet and you catch it between kind of your 2 ankles as it lands and you flip it up around the back of your head, all in one motion.
Yep. They'll come in useful in the game. I always think these people performing fucking seals. What are you doing? It's no use. You've been to Amsterdam, right, Johnny? You've seen that guy, Captain whatever his name. Yeah, all well and good. But you can't play football, can you, son? Not like me. Well, I can't play. But if I could play, I wouldn't waste my time doing silly tricks and flicks. I'd be a Terminator. Broken dreams, Johnny. Broken dreams and old age. Look him in the eye. I won't be a footballer now.
I think, therefore, I
regret. I think, therefore, I regret. Sounds about right.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know if there's a whole pile else. Like, I'm looking at my notes here. I don't have a whole pile else to say about this book.
No, that's it. We see there's no insight into the family other than that he's got a shitty Chinese tattoo of his son's name on his neck. He says
he doesn't like tattoos. I have 3 of them. That's what he says.
Yeah, but this is different, Johnny, because he feels these people on his skin, so they should be represented on his skin because he is a person. There is a lot of bullshit in here, a lot of waffle. Yeah, and he got very, very. I bet he take that back. Will I get a little Chinese symbol? Don't get a Chinese symbol. Don't do that. You did it. You did it anyway. So yeah, it doesn't like tattoos, but it has 3.
What was very strange, Al, was that chapter where he talked about the rumor where he was a member of the Romani community, which was a weird thing to bring up because he's essentially bringing it up to deny it. He said specifically that the rumor was that he's a member of the Sinti community, which is a subgroup of the Romani people in Italy. But it was weird, right? It was a weird thing to do, I thought.
Well, yeah, he said the press made a big deal of it. They thought it was... I mean, when we say Romani people, is it wrong to say gypsy? But I mean, the gypsy people is...
That's the term he uses, yeah.
Okay, but... So, yeah, he's at pains to point out he doesn't belong to this Sinti people. But equally, he said he was unable to say that he wasn't a member of the Sinti community because that would bring prejudice against them, which didn't really seem to make much sense. I mean, by the fact he was denying it, I guess, would be saying a snub.
And he was saying that it was a negative thing or something, I guess, by denying it or something. But
it was very peculiar. Just a very peculiar little story. And I guess it made more sense if you're Italian and know more about Pirlo than we do. I guess this must have been a big story in Italy because he addresses it for 4 or 5 pages in the book.
Yeah,
which, by the way, is a very, very, very short book. I mean, 4 or 5 pages is 6% of the book, near enough.
Oh, yeah, it's one of the 20 chapters of the book. Yeah, absolutely. I do think that he wasn't trying to be nasty or anything like that. I think it was just really clumsy and ill-advised.
No, absolutely. At all stages, I think Pirlo comes across as a decent fellow and is trying to convey that there isn't anything I'm reading where I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, and he even talks about, when in that Balotelli stuff, when you said, as he said, maybe it's a bit out of time how he put it, but he was saying that Balotelli could become like a role model for kind of anti-racism in Italy. And obviously in the 10 years since, things have gotten worse in Italy, including under the current government, which is a right-wing government. So I think he's a pretty decent guy. He's just also a bit of a dog.
Yeah. I mean, I think we perhaps expect too much for Pirlo, just simply because of the way he looks.
And in a way, isn't he okay, this just limits to this analogy, but maybe he's the Italian Matt Letizia. Not because Letizia is just kind of totally nuts, but Pirlo isn't as smart maybe as his football suggests.
Yeah, I think that's probably exactly right. At the end of the day, these lads get plucked to be footballers when they're 8 or 9 years old. They spend their whole lives in academies surrounded by other footballers talking about footballers and the things that football talk about.
And never having to grow up. Never having to grow up.
Never. Their world is PlayStations and it is football and it is girls and money, right? And how do you? I mean, I don't blame anybody.
And wineries.
Yeah, and wineries. And when you look like that, I mean, he's just the absolutely archetypal vision of an Italian lover. If he walked in a room, I'd be like, oh, I'll get my girlfriend. Come over here, lovey. Come here. Hold my hand. Here you are. Don't go and talk to him. No. Yeah, he'd make me feel insecure.
Well, and, talking about the world that they live in. So that he ends the book with this. He was approached by Qatar to go and play there for 10 million a year, but he was still playing in Italy. He was still playing with Juve. And he was like, I only came to be polite, but, it's not for me. And they're like, 11 million. He's like, no, 12 million. And his agent is kind of getting hot under the collar. But it's like he's kind of gilding the lily sometimes, Pirlo, because he doesn't need to do those things. Why does he have to tell us about that he was interesting to Guardiola or that Qatar wanted him to play football?
Well, I guess that is just an effort to tell us that he is not money orientated and he's playing for the love of the game. He doesn't, I mean, that's what he told them, right? I don't see my career as being over yet. He's going to try and play at the top level for as long as he can. What did Pirlo do when he left the Italian side? He just retired?
No, he played for New York City Football Club.
Oh, yes, he did. And genuinely, there were people in New York who didn't realise that he wasn't a specialist corner and penalty. There it is, a specialist free kick and corner taker. They really did think he was that because he would just not be present on the pitch, strolling around. He's famous over here. There were genuinely people who thought he was like a guy in American football who came on just only to take corners and free kicks. But in fact, he was on the pitch strolling around. Yeah, he didn't lift a finger.
He says in the book that he would never become a manager, but he did become a manager. He was the Juventus under-23 coach. And then he was just promoted to the first team role, but he didn't last a year. And I think they lost, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it was the first year that they didn't win the league for a long time. And he also managed in Italy and Sampdoria, but I don't think he ever lasted more than a year. So, but that's only up until 2024. So maybe like Lampard, who I see as in frame for the Coventry job, that Pirlo has a 4th or 5th life yet in management.
Yep, I suspect he doesn't. He comes across, he just doesn't have the intensity to be a manager, right? That's how he comes across to me in his book. Just too goofy.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Conte and Guardiola, the guys that he talks about, I doubt they were playing as much PlayStation as Pirlo.
No, you're quite right. Yeah, all those people, what do they all have in common? Old purple nose, it's the intensity. And yeah, he certainly doesn't have that.
this book, I didn't hate it, but it's bad. It's a bad book. And like I said, the performance of the audiobook, well, at some point it did start to become funny, but it was just because it was so bad. But I would say maybe give it, 2.5 max, 2. I'll give this 2.
2 out of 10.
No, 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I'd put that at a 5. I didn't like it to start off with. I liked it a bit more in the middle. I didn't like it at the end. But gosh darn, Johnny, of all the books that are short, I think this is the shortest. This was 2.5 hours reading. I say this every week, but you could read this in the time it takes you to watch a movie. You can. Anyone could.
So what are we saying? 2 purple noses.
Yeah, 40%. It's not great.
Yeah, if you found yourself in an airport and there was literally nothing else to read on the plane, fine. But I can't think of another situation where I would advise anyone to buy this book.
I worry this more than any other book we're going to be out of step with our listeners. Because Pirlo really is the hipster's choice. And I'm lots of things, but I'm not a hipster football guy. I'm not.
Despite my 1996 Italy Euro 96 shirt that I'm wearing right now, I don't consider myself a football hipster either.
No, I don't. I can remember there being an occasion when we were in Africa and I think the kids were off watching some sexy game and I was there like, it's Norwich Southampton, I've got fantasy assets.
What book are we doing next?
Well, I mean, would it be fair to say the original football hipster?
Yeah.
Ferenc Puskas.
Yeah.
And here's what I know about Ferenc Puskas, Johnny. He was in the old days. So I've got lots to learn.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Al.
Thank you very much, Johnny.
We are on Instagram. We also have an email address I failed to mention. Should anyone ever want to send a message, ademolabookmen@gmail.com. And thanks as always to Dara for the music.
Thanks very much, folks, and we'll see you next time.